a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, through the week, opinions have flared and social media has lit up. The loaded language has flown, and many international governments are wanting to declare their acceptance of a Palestinian state. It all sounds nice and easy on the surface, but in reality, such statements are made by glossing over many complicated and important issues on the ground. Through the clickbait and memes, even though they dumb down the complexity of the situation, many voices in the international community are far from convinced that this is a good idea. Chief among them being the US President and State Department. And here to bring us up to speed with this week's developments is our very own amazing Mandy Worby. Welcome back to 2020.
Hello, what an intro. Woohoo.
Wow, you're wonderful, and we want everyone to know how wonderful you are, Mandy.
You're very sweet. I'll pay you later.
Thank you. Just the usual fee will do. But what's up with all of these recognitions? There's been a lot of voices coming out.
Yeah, there have. Look, just before we get into that, I would just like to say that if you have little ears around, I think it would be a really good idea to get some of these little ears out of the room, because shortly I'm going to be describing something you're not going to want them to hear.
Thanks,
so
Mandy.
Now would be a good time to get any little people in the room into another room. All right. So let's be clear. Hamas is a terrorist organisation, and Hamas has been described as being beyond the brutality of the Nazis in World War II and beyond the brutality of ISIS that came to power during the Arab Spring. Wow. They rampaged through Iraq and Syria, right? They're beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay? They are beyond what any normal civilized person could even comprehend. They're that bad. Now, while it sounds great for the nations of the world to say, let's just recognise a Palestinian state, we'll acknowledge two states and it's all going to be hunky-dory, we're going to sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya, that is a fantasy. It's not going to happen. There is no negotiation with Hamas, okay? But then on the opposite side of them is the PLO, also known as the PA. Same charter, different name, okay? They operate differently to Hamas in that it's mostly by donning a suit and using diplomatic means, while at the same time encouraging their populations to engage in jihad and terrorism. And they actually pay their own people who commit terrorist acts. So for every Jew they kill, they get paid, all right? And the more Jews you kill, the more money you get. Okay, the more money you get.
Boggles the mind.
While wearing a suit and sitting at the UN and making diplomatic efforts. But they're not a legitimate peace partner. All right, now, our Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, she said that the PA has given her guarantees that they're going to stop paying terrorists to kill Jews and that they're going to stop all the incitement. Now, they haven't done it.
They've just
said that they will. But people have been, there have been politicians for decades telling the PA, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, and they won't. So on nothing but the promise of these people, Penny Wong has said, we're going to recognise a Palestinian state.
Okay.
Our Prime Minister said that Hamas would actually be angry with Australia's recognition of a Palestinian state because Hamas is opposed to a two-state solution. What did the Palestinians say at the words of our Prime Minister? Well, the co-founder of Hamas, Hassan Youssef, said, we welcome Australia's decision to recognise the state of Palestine and consider it an important step towards achieving justice for our people and securing our legitimate rights. Okay, he said more than that, but let's just go on. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, he said, if we want peace and security for all in the region, we have to preserve the condition of a political perspective for everybody, recognising a Palestinian state today is the only way to provide a political solution to a situation which has to stop. He went on to say, Hamas is just as obsessed by destroying Israel. Then how are you supposed to beat that obsession with a recognition that gives them what they want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Self-contradictory.
Hamas responded to President Macron by saying, a positive step in the right direction, a political development that reflects growing international conviction in the justice of the Palestinian cause. It's a victory for Palestinian diplomacy and Arab efforts, except it didn't come from diplomacy, it came from Hamas's terrorism. This is where it's all come from. The UK Prime Minister, he basically said, he said, let's be frank, Hamas is a brutal terrorist organisation. Our call for a genuine two-state solution is the exact opposite of their hateful vision. So we are clear, this solution is not a reward for Hamas because it means Hamas cannot have a future or a role in government or in security. Listen, most Britons have responded to Britain's recognition of a Palestinian state. They are livid, okay? And they're all saying, you've just rewarded Hamas.
Yeah.
Now, Reform leader Nigel Farage, right, he is the most popular political entity in the UK. He said Hamas and a Palestinian state are the same thing, okay? We have to remember that Hamas came to power because they were elected by the people of Gaza. Gazans wanted Hamas to lead them. In the territories that are currently governed by the PA, Mahmoud Abbas, all right, he's currently in his 20th year of a 4-year term. And you know why he won't hold elections? Because he knows that Hamas will win.
Right.
Okay? The rest of the world cannot stop Hamas from being a political party. They cannot stop them being elected. So to turn around and say a Palestinian state, a two-state solution, is going to get rid of Hamas, wrong. It's literally handing them the landmass on which to commit more jihadi attacks, just as the PA have said. If you look at everything that they stand for, it's the entire landmass. Yeah. They want the lot. They cannot accept a two-state solution because they cannot accept a Jewish state. And that's the bottom line. And what I would really like to do is actually detail the 5 different times the Palestinians were offered a Palestinian state and they rejected it.
Yeah, go for it.
Because this is not new. They have had this opportunity before. Okay, so in 1936, this is before Israel's rebirth, in response to the Arab revolt and increased Arab violence against the Jews living in what was then called this region of Palestine, the Peel Commission recommended partitioning the land into a Jewish state and an Arab state alongside like an international zone, like a corridor that would go from Jaffa over on the coast of the Mediterranean down to Jerusalem, and that was to be governed by the British.
Right.
The Jews said yes, and the Arabs said no. They said no outright, okay? Then in 1948, the Arabs rejected the partition plan that was given. That led to the War of Independence. Again, they refused at that time. Then in 1949, after the War of Independence and Israel's victory, the Arabs refused to create their own state in territory that today is called the West Bank because it became occupied by Jordan. They named it the West Bank. Yeah. It was never the West Bank before then. It was Judea-Samaria. Okay? Yeah. So they illegally occupied it. The Jordanians did, and that was only recognised by Britain and Pakistan. The rest of the world said it was an illegal occupation. But they had it, and then Gaza was occupied by the Egyptians after the War of Independence. They didn't establish a state then when they had control of it. They didn't establish it then. Then, I would also point out that in 1981, in an interview with a newspaper on November 26, King Hussein bin Talal, okay, former king of Jordan, he said this in a statement: the truth is that Jordan is Palestine and Palestine is Jordan. Now, the current king denounces that, but it was always recognised that Jordan was a Palestinian state and about 80% of the population claimed to be Palestinian.
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
In July 2000, President Bill Clinton was mediating between Ehud Barak, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Yasser Arafat at Camp David. Yasser Arafat is Egyptian, just quietly. And Barak offered Arafat 99% of what he wanted with some land swaps and concessions along the way for that 1% they couldn't agree on. Arafat walked away from the negotiating table and started the Second Intifada, which resulted in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deaths from suicide bombings. Wow. All right. Then, in the year 2008, Prime Minister Ehud Olmert offered once again to Mahmoud Abbas 99% of what the Palestinians wanted with land concessions and swaps and all the rest of it. They rejected the offer and Israel got more terrorism. So they've been offered it 5 times and rejected it every time. And again, I have to say this. They cannot accept a two-state solution, not the PLO, and not Hamas and not any other terrorist group, because it would mean accepting the existence of a Jewish state, and they can't do it. They want it all. It has to be all, and every Jew has to be killed. This is the mandate that they have, that they believe was given to them by their God. which means they cannot violate that because they would be disobeying God. We don't understand the mindset. We just think, give them a state and then they'll have elections and they'll be just like the rest of the Western world. No, they won't. They had elections and they're now being dictated to by terrorists. So this is the problem, and Israel is supposed to negotiate with this. They can't do that.
And this state that all of these international leaders are claiming they want to now recognise, they're essentially coming back to the table saying, we want to give you what you've already rejected 5 times.
That's right. It's like we say, what is the definition of insanity? To keep doing the same thing and expecting a different response, okay? But all that's happening is that the terrorists and the terrorism is being rewarded. Now, this is where I have to just say again, if you have got any little ears here, please just usher them out of the room for a second, okay? This is awful, but this is what's happening, okay? As these recognitions were taking place by the leaders of the world, including our own Prime Minister, Hamas actually took 3 of their own Gazan population, 3 men, on the accusation that they were collaborating with Israel. No, there was no court cases. We don't know if that was true or not. There's only needs of suspicion. They were bound, they were blindfolded, marched into the middle of the town square, and then they were knocked over, they were stomped on, and then they were shot in the head at point-blank range with machine guns, while Hamas terrorists videoed the whole thing, all the crowd that was around them cheering for this, and then they broadcast it to the world while the recognitions were taking place. Is Hamas frightened and upset and angry because of this recognition of a 2-state solution? Not at all. They're emboldened by it, okay? I have seen the videos.
Just a question for you there, Mandy. With all these people decrying the need for this 2-state solution and how they want to give the land over to the Palestinians, has anyone commented on that turn of events?
Well, this has actually made news all around the world, secular news, right?
Yeah.
Nobody said boo.
No one said anything.
Nobody's saying it. Not these leaders. There are people saying, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And the leaders are going, yawn, we're sticking it to Hamas.
Yeah.
Wrong. That's wrong. It's not the case at all. But I'll tell you who has responded very soundly to that, and that's the United States administration. A lot of people saying, well, they're kind of obsolete in all of this. Well, they're not. Here's the thing. What a lot of people don't know is that Hamas has actually written to President Trump wanting help because they know they're on their last legs in Gaza because Israel is not stopping and they've virtually got Hamas cornered now in Gaza City. They've written a letter to President Trump saying, we'll release half of the hostages if you can just get them to stop. And he's saying, no, you've got to release them all. So that's where that's at the moment. But guess who they're not calling on? They're not calling on French President Macron or Prime Minister Albanese or Prime Minister Keir Starmer or I can't remember the gentleman's name, the Prime Minister of Canada. They're not calling on any of those because they are irrelevant. They are completely inconsequential in the scheme of things. And even President Trump said that. This recognition by all these people, he said it's irrelevant. It doesn't create a Palestinian state out of nothing, and it's not going to make a difference on the ground. It has emboldened Hamas only. And the only reason Hamas like them is because they've been endorsed, basically. They've been given this green light, no matter what they say. But the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, he said that the day the French announced their thing of recognition, Hamas walked away from the negotiating table. They immediately increased their demands and they stopped negotiating. He said, we warned that would happen and it did. He also has just said that all they've done, all these national leaders, they're capitulating to the immigration crisis that they've got in their own nations. That's postulating. It's performative. The former UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, she said Britain, Canada and Australia are caving to Hamas by pushing for recognition of a Palestinian state. It's a shame our allies are more concerned about pleasing Hamas than releasing the hostages and ending the war. That's pretty strong. The House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Brian Mast in the United States, he said recognition of a state of Palestine is empty virtue signalling that only rewards Hamas butchers and rapists. So there's not going to be a Palestinian state because the rest of the world says we recognise it. That doesn't make a Palestinian state. And until there is a legitimate peace partner, until there is somebody that Israel really can communicate with who says, listen, we just want to live side by side. We're not going to have any more terrorists. We're not going to do any of that. There is nothing to negotiate with. Israel wants her people back out of the tunnels, and then she wants Hamas to lay down her weapons of war, and then the war will end. Guaranteed.
What's to be made, with just a minute to go, Mandy, what's to be made of these world leaders who are really stoking the fires of ignorance by coming out and oversimplifying?
Do you know, I can't even answer that question. I can't answer the question because it doesn't make sense. Yeah. How can you acknowledge something that literally, if you were to say, okay, you want to fly to the state of Palestine, where is it? Where's the airport? Where are its borders? Who are its leaders? What is its population demographic? What is its economy like? It doesn't exist. Okay, so they can't do that. In order to get to even talk to the leaders, they've got to go through Israel and her airport. Yeah. And they've just denounced Israel. So therefore, to continue down this lane literally just makes Hamas dig in that bit deeper, makes the PLO dig in that much deeper. They're not changing anything. They've not changed a charter. They haven't changed their posture. They haven't changed or made any policy differences. Nothing has changed. So it's. I think Marco Rubio's right. It's about politicking and the pressures from the nations of the world in their own backyards and what they're facing. And Israel is always the sacrificial lamb, always, in the eyes of the nations.
Plenty of us to pray about as we pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yes, please.
Thanks for joining us today, Mandy.
My pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.